Welcome to our final No Talk in this inspiring series at the Abu Dhabi International Book Fair. Today, we conclude with a profoundly significant discussion titled A Common Future Through Multilateralism. Multilateralism, this collaboration among nations to achieve our common goals, is really at the heart of addressing our most pressing global challenges, from climate change and economic stability to peace and sustainable development. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker, Ms. Bérangère Boëll, who is the resident coordinator of the United Nations in the United Arab Emirates. And Bérangère brings over 2 decades of experience in international cooperation, diplomacy, and sustainable development. She is known for her visionary leadership, but also her strong advocacy for inclusive global partnerships. And she has played a pivotal role in strengthening the cooperation between the United Nations and the United Arab Emirates. Her insights today will shed light on how enhancing multilateralism is not merely an option, but really an essential pathway to build a future that is like our shared future that will be sustainable, but also that leaves no one behind. Without further ado, please join me in warmly welcoming Ms. Bérangère Boëll.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. A real pleasure to be with you today and to talk about this extremely important topic about the future of multilateralism. And thank you for all the participants joining us in person, but also online. I mean, it's a topic that could take hours and hours to talk about. But if you allow me to condense, I mean, first let's go back to the roots. Multilateralism is the cooperation between countries that not a single country can achieve alone or in a small coalition for solving problems such as world diseases, climate change, wars, and sustainable development. As most of you know, the United Nations was created after 2 world wars with the main objective of ensuring and saving the new generations from the scourge of war. This year, we are actually celebrating 80 years of the United Nations, but it's a bitter celebration because we actually see that the world is getting more fragmented. Multilateralism is being questioned. International law and international humanitarian law are not respected by many actors, whether member state or non-member states. And that's why the conversation today is extremely important for us to revive the spirit of multilateralism and understand what it means. So if we go back 8 decades ago, when the UN was created, it had 3 objectives, and it remains, which is ensuring peace and security throughout the world, ensuring sustainable development throughout the world, including humanitarian aid, and ensuring actually the respect and the expansion of human rights. Since then, over the last 8 decades again, we've seen a lot of successes that reflect what the multilateralism is about and the power of the United Nations, whether we're talking about the Paris Agreement for climate change and the recent negotiation at the subsequent COPs, including COP28 that took place in the UAE, the eradication of smallpox, thanks to the united power and the WHO at the time, the management, subsequently of other diseases, and the promotion of sustainable development. The UN is made of 193 countries, member states, and it's present in 130 of them. And it's only through the partnership and the power that is delegated by all these member states that we exist. The UN is not a supranational authority. The UN is as good as what the member states give it a mandate for. So going back to the successes, we can cite also, the Beijing Summit and the CEDAW for advancing women rights. And, again, in the context of the UAE, giving credit also to countries like the UAE who have risen gender equality. And this is also thanks to this collective movement that this has been possible, in addition to obviously individual leadership from each country, first and foremost, through the leadership of those countries. Now, obviously, it's not a perfect system. We have seen a lot of drawbacks, starting with the impossibility because of the system of stopping conflict, those who actually go over decades, like in the Middle East. But also, in the DRC, in Sudan, in Syria at the time, genocides like in Rwanda, where the UN was not able actually to intervene and stop the genocide. So we have learned from this. It's not like the UN has actually been perfect. The UN has been learning from its shortcomings and has been actually proposing new mechanisms and a new way of doing and thinking. Now, taking into consideration the great successes, the failures, and how we've learned from it, we have been led by the Secretary General to go through a reform, which is what is called the UN 2.0. And that was even before it has been announced by the US administration and other countries, because we always mention about, the US administration, fairly so, because they were, the main funder, financial source of the United Nations, but also the NGOs, but also other countries have reduced their funding. So what I'm trying to say here is that going back to the roots, the heart of the UN is preventing peace, promoting dialogue, ensuring sustainable development for all, leaving no one behind. And this is where the SDGs are at the heart of it. And also promoting human rights and ensuring that the mechanisms that are in place are enforced, that everybody can enjoy the rights that are enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and that there is no impunity. We actually see, unfortunately, in the world of today, that it's a multipolar world, and that we are under threats that 80 years ago we were not under. Nuclear, powers have increased. The climate change crisis has, way worsened, and we have more data about it. We see that, conflict continue surging, access to resources, even, what we thought was actually kind of a well-established rule about World Trade Organization is also collapsing because of new rules that are being imposed by certain member states. So why is the multilateralism in the UN so important? It is because one country alone, or even a small coalition of countries alone, cannot solve world problems. Over the last 80 years, we have avoided a third world war. So yes, it has inefficiencies. Yes, we need to improve, but still the system has proved to live for the promise that it was looking at, which is avoiding the subsequent generations to suffer from the scourge of war. Now, what is the future? The future is the Pact for the Future. It has been approved last September 2024 at the UN General Assembly by all member states. And it's a pact that actually sets what all member states agree for the world to be better for the people, for prosperity, for the planet, and for a good governance. So there are even, some proposals about reform of expanding the Security Council, which is the most difficult topic within the United Nations reform. It actually also encompasses issue of access to financing for development. And here, this is also a key topic to ensure that all countries have a fair access to finances, especially those who are the least developed, because not everybody can actually borrow at the same rate on the market. And the burden of the debt is impeding those countries for actually ensuring their sustainable development and therefore creating the conditions for prosperity and peace. We also talk about the new generations, the Pact for the Future, the Digital Compact, which is the governance of artificial intelligence and how can the world actually make the most of all the technological advances that the world is actually living, but also ensuring that there's a governance and preventing that there is actually additional cyber crimes and many other actually wrong use of artificial intelligence and technologies. The Pact for the Future can only be a reality again if the member states decide to make it happen. Allow me to actually mention that in a few days, there is the fourth Financing for Development Conference in Seville, Spain. And allow me to actually quote, Napoleon was saying that, money is the nerve of the war. It is also the nerve of peace and development. So we really need to make sure that the world leaders first attend, because several have not confirmed their attendance, despite the invitation from the Secretary General of ensuring this is taken at the highest leadership of the countries, and that they actually finally agree on mechanisms that allow a fair access to financing for the countries, because this triggers down to all the realities that have been mentioned and all the challenges we're facing. This will allow also promoting peace. So I know that I have a limited time, but I just would like to touch on three more things. What is the current financial crisis that the UN is going through? Well, first of all, it's not only the UN. I really would like us to think about the overall global impact. And the Secretary General of the UN is constantly requesting us to make sure that we always look for those who are most in need and less privileged. So the impact is for the most impoverished, who are actually not receiving the humanitarian aid they should be receiving, because food aid has been cut, because refugees, and this is actually, we are in a time where the number of refugees in the world is the highest ever. And Sudan is actually the country that has a huge concentration. We're talking about over 12 million people displaced. And they're not receiving all this access. Then people are losing their jobs, as we're seeing. So throughout the world, the trade being disrupted, factories are being closed. NGOs, who are actually at the forefront of the work in the field, are also very much endangered. And obviously the United Nations too. So I think it's important not to put us first there, because we're here to serve the people, and our mandate is given by the 193 member states that compose us. There is a huge exercise that is ongoing, and I can tell you that the House is, vibrant of new ideas and and looking at how we can implement the UN80 agenda that has been set, which is looking at better efficiencies of the UN, looking at reviewing all the mandates that have been given to the UN by the General Assembly, the ECOSOC and other instances, because each UN agency has a governing body. So that is a lot of mandates, looking at duplication, overlaps, and proposing a plan for making us more fit for purpose and the UN 2.0 that we are meant to be, which is innovative, efficient, less bureaucratic, while always, being principled and caring for those who need it the most. So this is really the essence of where we are at. There's always two ways or looking at crisis. You can be actually, looking at the glass half empty or half full. We've seen that multilateralism has actually, and the UN has gone through other periods of crisis, and we've been able to sustain because we're a principled organization and because we are the only one that actually has the ability to be the forum of dialogue for maintaining peace, preventive diplomacy, promoting SDGs and what will come next, and finally also ensuring that human rights are being respected. I think I will hand over to you, Stephanie, and I hope I have not exceeded my time.
Not at all. Thank you so much, Bérangère. Actually, this has been very informative, even for the UN staff that I am, and thank you for this hopeful ending. We are having so many questions, and just before I choose the questions, I just want to say that multilateralism still matters, and as you have rightly said, one country alone cannot solve world problems. So I'll start with the first question. It says, trust in global institutions is reportedly at historic lows. In your views, what concrete actions can the UN undertake to rebuild trust and demonstrate effective multilateralism?
Thank you. And who is this question for? From? What's the
I'm
name
not
of
sure. I just got the question from my colleague.
Okay.
I'm not on Zoom,
Okay.
but
So
I
whoever
can
asked the question,
I can get the name now.
Thank you for that question. Well, just to address the person. Well, this is actually what we're doing now, and the UN80. So that links very nicely with, what I mentioned at the end. We are going to propose actually measures for being more efficient, for reducing costs, for reviewing our footprints, eventually mandates. As you can imagine, it's a very serious and heavy exercise. And this is, even some confidential documents have been leaked in the media. Yes. So it's not that anymore confidential. But there's a lot of proposals on the table. Right now, it's just a draft. Now, talking about trust, you can only build trust if you actually abide by your words. So whenever the member states approve a plan for us to be more efficient and to better deliver on our mandates, it will actually mean that we implement. There is a responsibility that comes from the UN, and we perfectly assume it's the accountability agenda that we have, but there's also accountability from the side of the member states, ensuring that whatever is being said in Geneva, in Rome, in New York, in Nairobi, and here I'm mentioning the big UN hubs, and also in the different committees that exist, whether it is the board of UNICEF, WFP, UNHCR, and others, that there is alignment. Because if there is not a march in order from all sides, then more importantly, we will lose the trust of the people we serve, the public. So we need to be able to showcase that we deliver. And we're very much aware that whenever we say that we are going to do something, we need to do it. So we really look forward actually to this moment. Again, it's an exciting time. It's a difficult time, but it's an exciting time for us to actually also rebuild more that trust, and especially with young people.
Thank you. That was actually an anonymous question. Now, this one's from Wiam Day. Do you believe the current architecture of multilateralism reflects the power dynamics and challenges of the 21st century, or is a reform overdue?
Sorry, the name?
Wiam.
Wiam. Thank you very much, Wiam. No, obviously it doesn't. And this is not, my opinion as a resident coordinator in the UAE or personally as Bérangère Boëll. If you refer actually to the Pact for the Future, there's a whole section on governance where all member states are addressing this. It has been, even the Secretary General has really tried to push hard for this. And especially for a seat, for Africa, because right now it's a continent that is not represented, but, many other countries that actually should have a seat at the table. That's a very sensitive question. And especially now when we see that there are several conflicts going on where some of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council still have strong disagreements, whether it is in Ukraine or the war on Gaza and the rest, yes, then it's actually a difficult time. But absolutely, I think, the world is changing, and we're still working according to a setup that was done 80 years ago that doesn't reflect neither the power dynamics nor actually also the current configuration of the economy, of the society, and others.
Thank you. Now, this question is from Sarah. Given that young people are inheriting these global challenges, how do you see the role of youth shaping the future of multilateralism?
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. And my apologies, because the Pact for the Future has an essential pillar about young people. So I'm sorry, because I'm always mentioning young people first. And maybe because I have this automatism, I actually forgot to mention. My apologies, really, because all our hope is in the new generation. You need to voice louder your concerns. I mean, we've seen obviously that, there is more presence of young people. There is also, an envoy for young people and a special office, a special department within United Nations. So you have, young people having their own office, like, women have their own office, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the new generation leading the world and making sure that your voice are heard loud and clear in all the platforms. So I would say that it would be good if teenagers who are using a lot of TikTok and other things would be also having some challenges of saying, how can you define the world as a better place when, right now I think they've deviated their attention because it's suffocating the world that, we are in. I've got 2 teenage girls, so I know perfectly they're absolutely aware of what is going on. And I speak also with their friends. It's just that it's heavy. It's psychologically heavy, especially after COVID, to ask them to actually, really being at the forefront. If we are not there as adults, as the one who are currently leading, supporting them to push. So young people to be louder, but also the current one to actually give more space. And again, allow me to speak about the UAE, because this is something that I just find amazing in my daily interactions with UAE officials, is the number of representatives that are female and that are in their 30s or even younger. Because until you put young people in leadership position, designing, not like being consulted, but designing the policies and having also a say, nothing will change. So we're very hopeful about the young generations for the revived multilateralism. Keep being loud.
Since you have mentioned the UAE experience, what lessons can other nations learn from the UAE experience, not only in regards to youth, but in general?
So the UAE has, I think, it's an extremely inspiring country on many fronts, whether it is with regards to inclusivity, whether it is with regards to the generosity, all the support they've provided, the humanitarian support they've provided to Gaza. No one has matched it. And it's not only providing financial support, it's actually Emiratis going themselves there, operating also the hospital, making sure that there is actually a desalination for the water, bread. Their trucks are the only one that are actually managed to go through Gaza until today. So, I mean, they have opened up also a new way of thinking of doing diplomacy through the Abraham Accords, of having conversations with partners, not discarding anyone, talking to everybody, and looking at development for the benefit of all. So I think, this is one of the greatest lessons that everybody can think of. Obviously, foresight thinking, artificial intelligence, this quest for always better, and humility. There's a lot of humility. Emiratis, people outside who don't know them, they just think about the bling bling of Dubai. Sorry, mentioned to the Siri, but yeah. But it's actually, there's so much humility that is very much linked also to the Muslim religion. So I think there's a lot to be learned. It's a country of tolerance, of open dialogue. 90% of the population is composed of foreigners who are all being granted, the same rights than the rest of the population, with, few differences, but nothing that touches on the essence of the universal access to, health or education and others. So it's a great lesson. Now, it's the year of community in the UAE. And we're very much counting on the UAE, who's like many of the Gulf countries, also favoring, direct support to countries, also to come at the table to help us revive the multilateralism. And it's not only the UN, obviously, it's all the financial architecture. And that's what also the Secretary General launched with the stimuli, the SDG stimuli on the financing, the World Bank, International, IMF and others. We really count on them to also, tell us how they can co-design with us the better multilateralism that we need to have.
Thank you so much. You mentioned financing, and we have a question in Arabic from Mohammed that I'll try to translate. So how can innovative partnerships, particularly with private sectors and also technology companies, enhance the impact and reach of multilateral efforts?
This is actually the key. Thank you so much. His name?
Mohammed.
Mohammed. Thank you so much, Mohammed, for your question. This is actually the key. The private sector, and sorry for always referring to, conventions or the bigger mic, but I think it's useful for you to know, so whoever is interested can research. In Addis Ababa, the conference of Addis Ababa actually defined clearly that sustainable development cannot be achieved if the private sector is not the main financial partner. The public sector cannot cope with all the needs. And we only achieved 17%, 17, of the SDGs. So by 2030, we're supposed to give a leapfrog of 83%, or at least to try to reach as much as possible. For this, we need the private sector with us. And the private sector is those who have the capacity to invest won't do it if there is a high risk or, a risk of losing their money. Not wanting to enter into, economical considerations, because other people are way better placed for me to do this. But simply put, even the World Bank, they are actually investing in places that are rated, AAA or lowest B. Whatever comes after, which is the vast majorities of the countries who need it the most, don't receive funding because the private sector is afraid of not getting its money back. not even making a profit, which obviously, is a must, but even, losing the investment that has been done. So what do we need? Why multilateralism is important here? Because we need a platform like the United Nations and, also the rest of the multilateral development banks to actually bridge public-private sector. We need de-risking. We need to find new mechanism for giving a guarantee, and there has been actually success stories. It's not like it has never been done, but we need actually to put them at scale and to have mechanism for the countries, the least developed, the one who need it the most, to be able to access funding and to be able to receive the big investment they need, whether it is in infrastructure, whether it is, even for the PMEs and SMEs. So for this, that's why I mentioned earlier the Financing for Development Conference in Seville, Spain. That is, if I'm not mistaken, 31st of May. That is essential. And that's why the Secretary General has called for world leaders to come. Because this is there that actually the question of how can the incentive be given to the private sector for, partnering with the public sector and do blended financing.
I'll take two more questions. What practical steps can developing countries take to ensure their voices are equally heard in multilateral forums, often dominated by powerful nations? This question, if I'm saying the name correctly, is from Nazia, who is a research officer from Pakistan.
Sorry, can you repeat the beginning of the question? Yes, Nazia, but I didn't hear the beginning of the question.
What practical steps can developing countries take to ensure their voices are equally heard in multilateral forums, often dominated by powerful nations? Okay, it can be developing countries, like what practical steps they can take, or how can we ensure their voices are heard?
I mean, the reason why the UN is so strong, it's just like one country, one vote, regardless of the size and the demography of the country, which is very different to many other instances. It's like everybody's equal as a country. There are various mechanisms and, smartness is everywhere. And, we've got such brilliant people actually coming from least developed countries. They know actually how to make the alliances. At the time there was the group of 77 that is not 77 anymore. And there are actually different configurations of coalitions of countries for them to push forward at the different UN forums their interest. A lot of conferences are actually also taking place, putting the focus on them. You've got also, heads of states of certain nations that are extremely vocal, especially for small islands and landlocked countries. There are also special envoys that have been nominated for looking specifically at those countries and making their voice heard in different forums. So I think from a diplomatic perspective, it's something that goes within the complex ways of things are actually working in the different international forum. But first we need to give them the funding and the mechanism for them to be able to actually reach their full potential, for the young people to have a future, for the young people to have their dreams, not a reality that can happen in another countries and risk their life crossing an ocean or a sea, or fleeing from war-torn countries. So this is the support, on peace, on sustainable development with the financing and human rights.
Thank you so much. I'll end with a personal question from Marie-Christine. She's saying, on a more personal note, could you share one pivotal moment in your career when you truly felt the impact and power of multilateralism at work?
Thank you.
Marie-Christine.
Marie-Christine. So I have been working for the UN since 2005. And I've lived several moments of a lot of happiness, but also some dramas. But I would say, for instance, I was working before for UNFPA, United Nations Population Fund. who is an organization that works for sexual reproductive health, so focusing very much on women and young girls' rights. And the essence of the United Nations is actually dialogue, is to influence also governments to look at the good practices and the wrong practices, and to promote laws that are aligned with international standards. And we've seen in several countries actually laws enforcing the fact that child marriage should be cancelled. Thanks to that also that perpetrators of gender-based violence should be held accountable, and in many ramifications. So this is one of the happy moments of multilateralism, when you see that you not only impact one life, but you impact many lives, and it's lasting because it is going through a trajectory. Obviously, there are drawbacks. Laws can be, cancelled, but also, in actually also protecting some communities in remote areas. My most recent post was in Mozambique, in Cabo Delgado, and Cabo Delgado is the north that is prone to conflict and natural disasters. And the power of the coordinated action of the NGOs and the UN under the leadership of the humanitarian coordinator has actually brought concrete life-saving for many people in the most remote areas, using innovation. Thanks to WFP, who has actually developed incredible new tools and the technology that also others have brought. So, saving one life is already fantastic, but taking it at scale and sustainably is also absolutely wonderful. So that's really the power of the multilateralism of the UN, to have humanitarian and development hand in hand, and trying to find long-lasting solution, preventing peace. The disarmament actually in Mozambique is the result of the UN. There was a special envoy that was nominated by the Secretary General for this purpose, and it worked. So we unfortunately see in the media too much of what doesn't work, but that's how news function. But there's a lot of success stories, and the disarmament in Mozambique and the peace negotiations being one of them. We wish them to be more, but yes. And I just would like to add that it's important to remember that the conflict in Gaza has actually killed more humanitarian staff than any other place, that people from NGOs and the UN have a lot of passion for what they do. And I think we forget to give sufficient recognition to those who are at the front line, taking risk, their own life, the one of their families, for making sure that they're helping others. So the spirit of help and solidarity is really what is at the heart of what we do and what multilateralism is about.
Thank you so much. Very enriching session, very insightful reflections, and thank you also for the personal experiences you have shared. I think this is a wrap for this session, but also for this special edition of Inspiring KnowTalks from the Abu Dhabi International Book Fair. And these sessions would not have been possible without so many people that the credit is due to them. First of all, of course, our speakers, our esteemed speakers, Bérangère, but also all other speakers. And in addition to our interpreters, to Bahar, to Ihab, to Yaman, also to Sanad, who helped us with videography and also live streaming, to Orion, this company that's helping us with also the social media, but also colleagues from MBRF and UNDP. I'd like to mention Mona, Miriam, Hani, Rasha, and all other colleagues. Thank you so much.
The power of teaming up together. So very nicely ending with multilateralism.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much also for the participants for engaging in and
Yes.
listening.
No, most enjoyable. Thank you so much.
Thank you.